It's been a long time since the White Sox made a free agent splash in the Japanese free agent market, and that's why recent buzz surrounding their latest scouting activity has fans wondering if this dry spell is about to end.
You are Locked On White Sox, your daily Chicago White Sox podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, I'm Todd Welter. Welcome to Locked On White Sox, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the #1 sports podcast network. I'm a lifelong Sox fan. I've been podcasting here for over a year and a half and covering the team well before then, and also I've covered Major League Baseball for outlets such as the Associated Press. Well, I'm going to get to your mailbag questions and comments to make sure your voice is heard on this show after I talk about how it's not going to be the end of the world if the White Sox do not protect certain prospects from the Rule 5 draft. But first, let's discuss the White Sox possibly having interest in Japanese free agent infielder Kazuma Okamoto and the two ways that could be huge for the South Side. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Download the app today. Now, I know I've been professing the White Sox should go out and sign Munetaka Murakami based on his age and upside, but I'll settle for Okamoto instead, and it sounds like that's where the White Sox are going to be focusing on, as reports were out that the White Sox had scouts in attendance when Japan faced Korea in an exhibition game recently. And while his power profile is not the same as Murakami, he may have the overall better bat. And while he is 29, signing him would be huge for this rebuild since he can play both corner infield spots. And he might be an upgrade at first base over Miguel Vargas, or at third base too. And since the White Sox do not have many long-term options at first, he at least could, provide that plug-and-play production during the years of his career where you can still expect solid production. I mean, you should still expect a player to still produce relatively good numbers, solid numbers, even sometimes great numbers in their years 29 to 32. That's still some performance years. Obviously, you start to get to some decline, but it's not going to be like a huge drop-off unless, there's just major injuries. And he's only had one huge injury, and it was kind of a freak injury. And also signing him would be huge because it's going to reopen Japan as a talent pipeline. Because remember, once upon a time, the White Sox once had a fan favorite and a World Series hero come out of Japan. Shingo Takatsu, he was beloved during his time as a closer on the South Side during the turn of the century. And Tadahito Oguchi, he's beloved for his role in helping the White Sox win the 2005 World Series. Remember the massive home run that he hit in the ALDS against the Red Sox? And it was always him and Scott Pasenik at the top of the order, always getting on base, always causing havoc on the base paths. That allowed the White Sox to score runs when they needed to score runs and to manufacture runs, kind of be Ozzie ball, the smirch ball, that type of stuff. But then suddenly the talent pipeline to Japan was just shut off. It was as if the organization just abandoned trying to find talent out of Japan. And that's a terrible decision considering you can always find at least plug and play players and sometimes generational talent like Shohei Ohtani. But remember, our owner laughed at the idea of the White Sox even pursuing Ohtani when he was available in free agency after ending his time with the Angels. We're not going to get into any Ohtani sweepstakes. Yeah, let's laugh at the idea of signing one of the best players of all time. Yeah, that's funny. At least, though, one of Chris Getz's front office reforms was to hire a scout in Japan and basically create a presence in the NPB, the Nippon Professional Baseball League. That's Japan's, MLB's, that type of stuff for those scoring at home. And obviously the White Sox are going to face some stiff competition in the sweepstakes to land Okamoto. Other teams in attendance were reportedly the Phillies, Yankees, Padres, Angels, and Blue Jays. And Just Baseball also lists Boston, the Mets, and the Mariners as ideal landing spots for him. MLB Trade Rumors has also predicted that the Pirates could sign him. So obviously it's not going to just be the White Sox kind of finding this Japanese free agent that they can plug and play. Because that's kind of how it was with Tadahito Oguchi. I mean, if I recall, there wasn't a lot of teams interested. And the White Sox really never saw him play. They just saw the numbers and were like, hey, let's get this guy in to play second base. But there's going to be some huge competition for his services. And the cost is going to range from, first, you got to pay the Yokohama Giants their posting fee. And then the contract, there's been projections for anywhere from 3 years and $36 million to $78 million over 4 that I've seen. But remember, if it's $78 million, that would actually tie the highest free agent contract ever given out by the franchise. So you can actually see why the White Sox would be interested in him over, say, Murakami. Also, he has a better bat-to-ball skills profile than Murakami, and he has a power profile as well. So he might be the better overall player. He's just a few years older, but he does sit within the free agent costs that this organization is comfortable with. And he would also help address, again, their first base issue. Or again, you can have him play third and you can move Miguel Vargas over to first. But his numbers are impressive in the MPB. He had a 210 WRC plus this past season, although he only suited up in 69 games due to an elbow injury. But that was really the only major injury that he's had. But here's the impressive part that he had even in those 69 games. An 11.3 strikeout percentage. And outside of having a 21% K percentage in 2019, his strikeout percentage has always been under 20. It's usually in the teens. And his walk percentage the past 3 seasons has been in the double digits. He has a career 361 on-base percentage in the NPB, along with a career 882 OPS. He also crushed 41 home runs in 2023, and he led the NPB in home runs 3 times, made 6 All-Star teams, and he won 2 Gold Gloves in Japan. And Marquee Network's Lance Brzezowski, he tracked down some advanced numbers. He's got it up on YouTube, and Okamoto's average exit velocity is actually 3 miles per hour above MLB average. He's got a 90% zone contact rate and just a 20% swing and miss rate. So this guy's going to make a lot of contact, and he's got the chance to hit bombs. Just a really good overall hitter. But, he's comes with flaws. There's no such thing as a perfect player. And his biggest issue per Fangraphs will be how he handles Major League velocity. Because Fangraphs' Eric Loganhagen, he observed that Okamoto's stats decreased dramatically, or as he called it, falling off a cliff on fastballs over 94 miles per hour. However, one of the things that they're saying is it just might not be, he doesn't have enough experience facing velocity 95 or more. He only faced 200 pitches over 94 miles per hour all of last year. And because that's always the concern with Japanese hitters is they don't face the same type of velocity, at least consistently, enough that major league hitters do. I mean, obviously, Ohtani could throw 100 miles an hour. Roki Sasaki could throw 100. But some of these guys are just spin guys. They've got great breaking stuff and great sliders and amazing changeups and that gyro ball, that type of stuff. But Japanese pitching isn't always known for its just dearth of guys that can throw 95 or higher, where in the States, obviously, you're facing a lot more guys that can throw some serious heat. But some scouts and experts just believe he could hit fastballs in the majors just with more experience. And you saw last season how the White Sox hitters actually got better at hitting heat as the season went on. So they could put him into their infrastructure, and I think feel comfortable knowing that maybe he could get better. And he definitely fits the good swing decision profile that the White Sox love, and he also fits the getting on base profile that the front office loves. Now, he does project to play more first base, so that would obviously fit a huge need. But the key will be, obviously, can the White Sox convince him to come to the South Side? Now, he does have some comps to Seiya Suzuki, so the Sox could possibly just obviously tap into, hey, Japanese players have always loved their playing time in Chicago. But the other biggest issue is, can they win the bidding war? And that's something this team usually doesn't win. Well, the White Sox must decide which prospects to place on the 40-man roster by the end of the day, by 5 p.m. today, Central Time, to protect from the Rule 5 draft. So let's discuss, no matter what the White Sox decide, it's not going to be the end of the world, and that's after the break. The NBA is back, and there's no better place to get on the action than FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you missed the start of the game or want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay for a shot at an even bigger payout. It keeps everything, exciting, especially when your team's making that late push. And I'm always telling you about how fun it is to play FanDuel's traditional money lines, the over-unders, and the spreads. But if you want to win some big-time money, at least double or triple your cash, play FanDuel's props, parlays, or futures. The NBA Cup championship game is just under a month away, and if you think Cleveland is going to win it, they're at plus 800 the last time I checked. So even as putting as little as $5 on that and it hitting, that could pay out $40. Think Milwaukee could win the NBA Cup 2 years in a row. Well, they're at plus 1900 the last time I checked. So $5 on that and it happening. And if it does happen, well, that pays out $95. And if you think Luka can win the regular season MVP, well, he's at plus 500. So $10 on that. And if it does happen, well, that would pay out $50. And right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So head to FanDuel.com to sign up and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Welcome back to Locked On White Sox. I'm your host, Todd Welter. Again, thank you for making Locked On White Sox your first listen of the day. And thank you for making Locked On the #1 sports podcast network. Make sure to hit the like button on today's episode. Subscribe to the YouTube channel at Locked On White Sox. And if you can't catch the show on YouTube, you get the audio version of the show on places such as Apple or Spotify. So make sure to follow or subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Either way, get your 30-minute fix of Chicago White Sox baseball venting with me and maybe some hope. Also, make sure to check out my written content at SouthsideSox.com and on TapSportsNet.com. All right, so you're going to see some White Sox transaction news possibly while you're watching the show on YouTube or obviously listening to this episode. In fact, I'm just going to go to the Twitterverse just to double check as I'm recording this episode. The White Sox have not made any announcements yet on the 40-man roster, but they do have to make some decisions by 5 p.m. Central Standard Time to add prospects that would be eligible for the Rule 5 draft to the 40-man roster to keep them out of the draft pool. And the White Sox have 7 players in their top 30 prospects list, at least according to MLB Pipeline, that would be eligible for the Rule 5 consideration, but they just have only 5 open roster spots. And let me make this clear. Outside of maybe, say, Tanner McDougal, well, I would say just this. Outside of Tanner McDougal and then maybe Shane Murphy, the White Sox could lose any of these players in the Rule 5, and the organization's still going to be just fine. These prospects, I would say just outside of Tanner McDougal, and like I said, possibly Shane Murphy, if the White Sox didn't put any of the rest of these prospects that I'm about to talk about on their 40-man roster, they're going to be okay. I mean, those 2 pitchers, I would definitely keep giving McDougal's immense potential to at least be, an outstanding middle-of-the-rotation pitcher or a potential elite high-leverage arm with the velocity that he possesses. And Murphy, he could at least be a very good back-end rotation lefty with the crafty stuff he provides. And again, the White Sox, I know they've got some lefties in Noah Schultz and Hagen Smith, but you can't hurt to have maybe your 5th starter also be a lefty. I'm just saying he's also got the chance to even be one of your off-speed, long relievers as well with the craftiness that he has. And, in a lot of ways, he's like kind of that perfect exception that you should always make when you're drafting a pitcher, in that you should be looking for velocity, I think, velocity and stuff. But if you got a guy that just has pure good stuff that he can locate his pitches, we never want to ignore the chance to potentially get Greg Maddux or the next Greg Maddux or Tom Glavine. Now, I'm not saying that he's going to be that guy, but the stuff that he throws, his fastball can be just a little bit under 90, but how he can locate and the numbers that he put up at AA, there's the potential that maybe that could be a ceiling, but at the very least, he could be a productive outgetter. But again, if the White Sox don't put a lot of these guys on the 40-man, they're going to be just fine. Because you might see in the social media White Sox Twitterverse be like, oh, how can they not protect Aldrin Batista? They're going to be okay. Because you got to remember, they're just prospects. And prospects are either potential core players, potential contributing players, but they're also potential trade pieces, and also they're potential busts. Like I said, most prospects are meant to be stars on other people's teams. It's just, that's what happens. And I mean, I love what Mason Adams did in 2024 in the minors. And I was obviously shocked that he actually never got a call up to take a start during that historically awful season. But he never got a call up that year, and he's going to be coming off Tommy John surgery. So I'm not going to be like, oh my gosh, I can't believe the White Sox didn't protect Mason Adams if they don't add him to the 40-man roster by 5 p.m. Central Standard Time today. Because the White Sox still have pitching depth. they still got other guys that they could develop into very good arms. And I've gone back and forth with protecting Adams. On one hand, you could roll the dice and see if a team, in the major league round would rather just not pay the $100K to take him on a test drive because you're going to have to wait for him to be healthy. So you could stash him, obviously, because he's going to be coming back from Tommy John. But at some point, once he comes off the 60-day, you immediately have to put him on the major league roster. So the White Sox, obviously you can give him a rehab assignment, but let's say they don't put him on the 40-man. He comes off the IL because he should be ready to pitch at some point. You could have him still do his rehab assignment, and then if he still needs a little bit more build up on his arm, he could stay at AAA. Or the other benefit is you could put him on the 40-man roster, knowing that you can throw him back on the 60-day IL once spring training opens, and you can get some roster flexibility there. You obviously have to carry him on your 40-man until spring training, but you know that, hey, if somebody on the non-roster invites makes the team, we could easily open up a 40-man spot by just putting Adams on the 60-day IL. So that's kind of where you kind of look at it. Now, MLB Pipeline has listed Shane Murphy as the team's hardest decision to make based on obviously having elite production at AA. I mean, I think he had the lowest ERA in all of the minor leagues. And that is obviously, great, but he does lack velocity. He is going to be more of a location guy. And when guys can't throw in even like a 91, 92, 93 mile per hour fastball, if you miss on that, it's going to go a long, long way. But I know pitching director Brian Bannister, he's high on him. So it wouldn't shock me to see him make the 40-man. So let's just say those three are added. Then the White Sox have to decide what to do with the rest of their top 30 prospects, at least per MLB Pipeline. Peyton Pallette, a right-handed pitcher, he's ranked number 14. He's eligible for the Rule 5 draft. Juan Carella, number 24. He's also eligible, a relief pitcher. Right-handed pitcher, Aldrin Batista, he's ranked number 26. Outfielder Samuel Zavala, ranked number 29 and 28. And left-handed pitcher Tyler Schweitzer, who's ranked number 29. So those are the guys that they all have to make a decision. I still think they should add Pallette with his velocity, as I could see him getting picked up and being stashed in the bullpen. I mean, even contenders, I think, should be interested in taking a flyer on the heat that he could provide. But I could see them possibly not rostering him, considering they never called him up when they really needed a power arm in the bullpen outside of Grant Taylor. They just never considered it. They, promoted him to Charlotte and sent him to that bandbox and wasted some bullets there when he was obviously showing command. So I don't know if they're totally sold on him. But I would still think, hey, he's a power arm. You need power arms. Juan Carella, he's coming off Tommy John surgery too. So that's another one where it's going to be interesting to see what they do. I mean, you could throw him on the 40-man roster, carrying him through the offseason, and then obviously get that roster flexibility by putting him back on the 60-day IL while he still rehabs and probably gets ready to pitch by the second half. Batista, I mean, maybe you could lose him in the minor league round, but he's battled some injuries this past year. And if they do lose him, oh well. He's going to be 24 and he's still at high A ball. Tyler Schweitzer maybe could be a reliever in the bigs, but he's also 25. And he was already given up as a starter prospect. Samuel Zavala, look, I just don't see a big league taking him during the major league round. And I do respect him bouncing back from that terrible 2024 season. But I'm not sure a team is going to take a chance on him in the minor league round either. Because while he bounced back, it was still like he hit 254. So I don't see him being this like, hey, we got to have him. Let's pay the fee to get him into our minor league system and keep him in our minor league system throughout the year. And again, if he's gone, I think the White Sox can find more future outfielders in next year's draft. Caden Conner, he obviously had an impressive Arizona Fall League, but I'm not sure a team wants to stash a non-power hitting corner outfielder and first baseman on the bench. I just don't think they're going to do that. And again, if he's lost, he projects to mostly be a utility player. Losing Riley Gollins or Duncan Davitt would mean losing prospects you got in trades and depth starting pitching, but that's about it. Ben Peoples, he was obviously picked up in the Adrian Hauser trade. He projects to be a potential reliever, so technically, you could be losing that potential. But again, you've got some other guys that project to be relievers in your system, and he's technically not even supposed to be in your organization. So the White Sox are going to be fine if they do not protect some of these guys. Plus, they can still make additional room on the 40-man by announcing like non-tendering Derek Hill. I don't know why Ben Collins is still on the 40-man. I mean, you could live without Cam Bouger or even Yoendrys Gomez. So I think they're going to be just fine. Well, let's tackle your mailbag questions and comments after the break. Welcome back to Locked On White Sox. I'm your host, Todd Welter. Again, shout out to all the everydayers. I appreciate your loyalty. Please hit the like button on today's episode. Recommend to yourselves, Sox fans or baseball fans, friends, to subscribe to the YouTube channel at Locked On White Sox, wherever they get their podcasts, as this show is available on all major podcast platforms. So I've been asked to list my current favorite player and my current my favorite Sox player of all time, along with sharing probably the saddest calendar of all time on this week's mailbag. And I do got two conflicting comments on the White Sox catching situation that I actually want to lead off with. And these two conflicting comments were left on the YouTube channel on the episode page where I talked about the Kyle Teel and Edgar Quero trade rumors. So at Wolf Larson, and it's Wolf with a 1 instead of the L, Larson, he commented this: I'd keep them. Teel is really good athlete and can get reps at other positions. Besides, maybe the Sox can blaze a trail and carry 2 starting quality catchers on the same roster. And he was responding to Joel Wexon 8545, another everydayer. Appreciate your comments, both of you guys. He writes this: I wrote in this space weeks ago that having 2 guys at their respective young ages is unsustainable, if only because each guy will rebel in some way at the thought of A, having to share time, B, having to play, learn another position, C, lose valuable rapport with the pitching staff. None of these guys want to play first base or DH. They each want to be the top dog, to call the pitches, to direct the infield, to be the sharpshooter that throws out runners, etc. That's what their training and mindset has centered on since they first strapped on the tools of ignorance. As for Lee, that's a luxury that likely won't be into either. Ideally, the Sox should trade either Teel or Quero, as well as Lee. Focus then on one stud and back him up with a reliable veteran, and get as much young talent in return as you can, preferably pitching, first base, or outfield. I'm going to go with Wolf here, in that you can have guys split time at catcher. It's a taxing position. And a lot of teams are starting to go more and more where the backup catcher isn't playing, 40 or 50 games. They're playing more because, again, it's a taxing position. It really wrecks the knees and that type of stuff, and the aches and pains and all the stuff you take off your face. I mean, the Yankees rotate their catchers. Austin Wells plays first base too. And unless this guy has some inside information, I haven't heard Kyle Teel say, I have to be catcher. I've heard him say, I'm willing to shag fly balls, because they did have him shag fly balls during the minor league season. And he said, and even that 1 inning that they had him play left field. Yeah, he said he played catcher. He played left field in college. He's willing to do it. And, trading 2 of your 3 young veteran catchers, I would rather have the savings on the salary. I mean, yes, backup catchers don't make a ton, but you still get Korey Lee on a cheap pre-arb deal. Why would you want to, finances on that? Because, again, the money is very limited. And plus, this wanting to be the man at catcher, well, I'd rather have someone who is willing to do what's best for the team. I don't want to, like, Rafael Devers in Boston situation. I would hope both Teel and Quero are willing to do what's best for the team, not themselves. And also, if you want to argue handling pitchers, I don't think either pitchers have had a problem working with Quero and Tero, since they're all growing together. And this, again, I've covered catchers. I've never really met an egomaniac catcher. I've met crusty catchers. They really become very crusty guys because of all the stuff that they take. They become gamers, but I've never met a catcher that's like, I am the top dog. I lead everything. Like maybe back in the day when Carlton Fisk or even Jason Varitek, but it's kind of an evolving thing. And one of the reasons why guys do catching is there's not many people willing to be crazy enough to do it. So it's a way to get on the field. So I'm with Wolf in that, and not that you don't know what they have. I mean, yes, it sounds like, teams are interested in Teel and Quero, but what are they offering? Are they going to offer the very high price that you want? Then I would, that's fine. But it's kind of like right now, you don't have to make that decision. You don't have to multiply the assets. And Kyle Teel also has to be the potential to be your best overall bat, but Edgar Quero might be too. So I would still give it a chance. And again, I don't remember, and I watched a lot of White Sox baseball. I've talked a lot of White Sox baseball, covered all that. I don't remember Quero and Teel being like, I have to be the man. I think they were fine splitting time. I think that's okay right now. I think they were okay. All right. Anyways, Brian emails this. Who's your favorite White Sox player of all time? And who's your favorite White Sox player on the current roster? Wow. Oh, man. It's hard to just pick just one. Like in terms of the pool of all time, I mean, even my pool, Harold Baines, Ivan Calderon, Lance Johnson, Jack McDowell, Wilson Alvarez. Kind of like Greg, I kind of did like Greg Hubbard. Tim Raines, Mark Burley, Ozzie Guillen, Ray Durham, Frank Thomas, Paul Konerko, Maglia Ordonez, Joe Creedy, AJ Przinsky, Freddie Garcia, Tim Anderson, Jose Abreu, Tadahito Iguchi, Garrett Crochet, Aaron Rowand, Jermaine Dye, Carlton Fisk, Jim Tomei. I mean, it's really hard. I mean, again, that's my lifetime. I mean, obviously, some of you everydayers, you go a lot back further than me. So I'm just telling you what my pool was. Even just growing up, like I know my dad's two favorite players were Nellie Fox and Louis Aparicio and Minnie Minoso too. So I could even put them in there because I've heard a lot of tales about how great Louis Aparicio and Nellie Fox were and Minnie Minoso. So I would have to say it's Konerko over Thomas and Burley just because of all the great moments Konerko had over his career. And just him just being that, guy that looks like he shouldn't be a potential Hall of Famer, and he was, and how he revived his career on the South Side, and the Grand Slam, and being the captain, and being willing to come back for lower money and that type of stuff. I mean, if you want me to split up between like my first favorite as like a young kid, and then as a teenager, and then obviously adult, it goes Baines, Thomas as a teenager, and Paulie as an adult. Or while Baines kind of, transitioning into a teenager, and a little bit of Ozzie Guillen too. I mean, obviously. But if it came down to my favorite pitcher, obviously it's clearly Burley. I mean, especially I loved when I had tickets to the White Sox games if Burley was on the mound because I knew I was going to get an entertaining game, but I also wasn't going to be sitting there for 3-4 hours as well. All right, so Bob emailed me about quite possibly the saddest calendar purchase ever made and his hope for the 2026 White Sox calendar being much better. This is what he writes. Yes, I still buy a paper wall calendar. I'm nervous about who will be on each month of the White Sox calendar in 2026. I was very disappointed in this year's and would really like to know who's approved these players. 8 of the 12 months featured a player that didn't play a game for the Pal Host. True story. 2025 White Sox calendar. January, Benintendi. February, Vaughn. March, Crochet. April, Robert Jr. May, Kopech. June, Eloy. July, Shoemake. August, Brebbia. September, Nicky Lopez. October, Gavin Sheets. November, Jimmy Lambert. December, Lenine Sosa. What a sorry choice of players for the calendar. First, nothing wrong with buying a wall calendar, although in hindsight, this is just my suggestion, hindsight being 2020, I would have bought one of those tearaway calendars for the 2025 year, knowing just how terrible the 2024 season is. Those tearaway calendars, they're the single days, they usually have some sort of trivia on it. I would have had that, knowing that these are the players that could potentially be on the next year's calendar. And while those calendars can be a pain because you got to remember to tear away each day, and they probably work best in an office situation, but at least you wouldn't have to be subjected to looking at some of the worst players in Sox history every day for a month. So I'm sure, though, the printers needed like the pictures or the information way in advance. So that's why you probably got a calendar with guys who were likely on the 40-man roster, like into January of 2025 at the start of the season. So I do think buying a 2026 calendar will be, if the printer needed the order around, like, say, August, you should be getting, the promising core, from that emerged from this season, like Shane Smith, Colson Montgomery, Kyle Teel, Edgar Quero, Grant Taylor, Mike Vassell, Jordan Leisure, Miguel Vargas, Davis Martin, Lenine Sosa, and Chase Mydroth. But if it was possibly around the same time frame as the 2025 calendar needed to be submitted, like, let's say, open, 40-man roster on January 2025, well, you might be getting another calendar of Luis Robert Jr., Andrew Benintendi, but hey, there might be Sean Burke on it at least. Maybe. I don't know, man. I'm sorry about that. You might get another Andrew Vaughn calendar, picture on one of the calendars too. Well, that wraps up this edition of Locked On White Sox. Thank you for making Locked On White Sox your first listen every day. For your second listen, check out Locked On MLB Game Night. Get local analysis on a national scale. Find MLB Game Night on Locked On MLB on YouTube or listen to your podcast. I'll be back tomorrow with a Way Back Wednesday segment and some potential prospects the White Sox could pick up in the Rule 5 draft. You can leave comments about today's episode on the episode page on YouTube via email, lockedonwhitesox@gmail.com, on X, formerly Twitter, @LockedOnSox or @ToddJDub. Also, make sure to like today's episode on YouTube. Leave a 5-star review at wherever you get your podcast. Also, subscribe to the YouTube channel at Locked On White Sox, wherever you get your audio-only podcast. Have a great day, and I will talk to you tomorrow.